Hey YouTubers, today I'm doing coolant, timing belt, water pump, thermostat, all the bearings, and the power steering pump. Now the thermostat had two bolts, Torx bolts like that. You can see one. You can see the second one I had to grind off because it was just completely seized up. I stripped it out. Then I ground a big, groove with a cutoff wheel like this, and used a big screwdriver with, adjustable wrench on it, and then the bolt actually split in half, but it just wouldn't let go, so I ended up grinding it off just to replace the thermostat. Got a new one here. Got the timing belt off. Couple tips with the timing belt on this vehicle. Well, first tip on any vehicle or any car, when you work next to radiator, just get a piece of cardboard and just slide it in there, because you'll slip on the one wrench or something, one bolt, and your wrench goes into radiator. Well, that's 150 bucks usually, because it's so easy to damage a radiator. Tip number 2, there's two bolts that hold this tensioner. Make sure you take the bottom bolts out first, because the bottom bolt is the one that it's really hard to remove. You get maybe 1/8 of a turn on a wrench, open wrench. You can't fit a socket in there because a pulley is in the way. And if you remove the top bolt, which is easy to access, if you remove that bolt first, now you have the tension of the whole belt pushing on the second bolt, and then you're gonna have to use a wrench to unscrew it all the way out, and this is a long bolt. Yeah, this is how far the bolt goes into the block, and if you can't unscrew it by hand, you're gonna be just half an hour doing little turns, so make sure you take the bottom bolt first. A third tip is use a whiteout to mark the pulleys and the belt on the bottom too, and then mark the new belt. I mean, there's timing marks that obviously you have to use, but marking the belt, it just kind of double checks everything, assuming the engine was had the right timing. Now this engine ran beautifully, so I checked the marks before I removed the belt, and the timing was right on. So just putting little white marks, and then I'll put the white marks, copy it from old belt to the new belt, and then this gives me like a double accuracy, I guess, if you will. I also checked the little marks, obviously. See, there's little notches. There's a notch pointing here, a notch pointing here. You can't probably see it, but there's a tiny little notch pointing to there's a little tab sticking out on the oil pump. It all has to line up, then you know you're in the top dead center. But the white marks help too. It just basically gives you assurance that the belt is right. Hey, this is what I do with torque wrenches. I grind them flat, so there's no like a bevel or anything, so you get maximum engagement. Especially on the on this one. Look how shallow this is. This is a tensioner that just floats, and it's pushed by the hydraulic tensioner. It's held by one screw, and see how shallow that is? That's why I grind them sharp like that, because you get barely a 1/16 of an inch engagement on a screw. It's so easy to strip out, and I find these bolts everywhere on this Volvo. So that bolt that I ground off, unscrew by hand, the stud. Here it is. There's no Loctite on it, no corrosion, nothing. It's just how tight it was. I mean, come on. It's just a thermostat housing. It's got a rubber gasket. There's no need for it to be this tight. Like I said, I ground a big groove in the bolt and ended up splitting it in half. It broke apart, but it would not unscrew. That's how tight it was. Alright, let's swap out the thermostat. Then I'm gonna swap out the steering pump. The bracket is made in Germany, but the bearings are made in France. Hopefully you can see that it says France on top. Of course, I bought OEM only. You don't mess around with timing stuff. Same thing with the tensioner. The tensioner was leaking a little bit, so I bought the original OEM made in Japan. And I think it was like $80, so you can buy one for like $12 on eBay. Made by who? Who knows? China. But this one says ASIN on it. Original OEM parts. When you do timing belt stuff, you don't put aftermarket crappy parts on. It's one thing you don't do. Because if it breaks, there goes your engine. Got new seals for it. What else? Oh, I forgot. What else I got new? Oh, I got the new idler pulley for the Serpentine belt. And of course I installed from the junkyard original Volvo power steering pump. My old one is sitting right here. That's the old one. It was original Volvo one, but you know, 160,000 miles. This one I pulled from a vehicle that had 87,000 miles on it. And it's original Volvo pump. Finally got the power steering. I need to lube. There's a little U-joint underneath there. It's cracking, but at least now I can turn the steering wheel with one finger. So I got all the fluids except oil change. That's the last thing to do. All other fluids been flushed and got a new everything. Brake, power steering, transmission, coolant.